everybody, and welcome to Win Championship Trades for Life, a show focused on strengthening the mental fitness of athletes, coaches, and anyone and everyone that works within a team environment. I'm Lee Elias, that's JB Spizo, and we are joined today by Gabe Hunterton. Gabe, who is a native of Las Vegas, Nevada, attended Yale University, where he played guard for the school's Division I basketball team from 1994 through 1998. Gabe played in 100 games in his Ivy League collegiate career, averaging over 28 minutes per game, and finished his career with 917 points, 267 assists, 260 rebounds, and 71 steals. Impressive numbers. After graduating with a bachelor's degree in economics, Gabe cut his teeth in the gaming industry, rising to multiple executive levels, including Senior Vice President of Business Development, Deputy Chief Operating Officer, and Property President with a famous resorts and entertainment group. After retiring from the corporate gaming industry in his early 40s, Gabe set his sights on entrepreneurship and developed several successful gaming programs for sports betting and fantasy sports. In addition to English, Gabe speaks Spanish and Cantonese and is an avid outdoor enthusiast. Gabe, welcome to Win.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, the pleasure is all ours, man. I want to jump right into the first question. Let's start about your path to Division I sports and Division I basketball at one of the most prestigious Ivy League schools in the country, if not the most prestigious. Was this your childhood goal? Is this something you strove to later in your teen years? How did it work out, and how did you get to where you got to?
Okay, it was, yeah. So when I was a young kid, my mother worked with the UNLV Rebels program. And this was when UNLV had first become, one of the big name programs, and they were sort of the bad boys of college basketball. And it was at that time, and still is, the UNLV basketball program was kind of the pride of Las Vegas. And These guys were gods wherever they went in town. And my mother was their academic advisor, so I got to spend a lot of time around the team. And I'm talking, I was 6, 7, 8 years old. And I just loved playing basketball. I loved being around the team. I was the kid who would go out in the 110-degree heat, and I'd play basketball in our front yard for like 9 hours, and until somebody came out and got me. And how I didn't suffer heat stroke or something like that is beyond me. But I just love doing it. It's what I wanted to do every day. And my dream was to play big time college basketball and then to go play in the NBA. And I just didn't have the talent level. But I got to play basketball at Yale, had some phenomenal experiences. I've played against probably 8 or 10 NBA All-Stars. And just had, a phenomenal experience to this day. The guys that I played basketball in college were great friends of mine. And by the way, it got me into Yale University, yeah. Which at the time, I'll admit, I did not appreciate. At the time I was thinking, man, like I really want to go, I want to go play at North Carolina. I want to go play at Syracuse. But yeah, it was playing basketball was my dream, my passion. It was what I loved doing. I mean, I did it. I'm sort of a math person, so I once estimated this. I'll bet I played basketball 350 days a year, every year from when I was 5 until I was 22.
Wow.
And I just absolutely loved it, and I'm so thankful for the experience and for all that it taught me.
Before JB, you jump in, I'll say this few things. One, mandatory viewing for our audience. Go check out the 30 for 30, the Running Rebels of UNLV. It's a great documentary. Can totally see how that would inspire you. And number 2, Gabe, I appreciate you telling us that about your dream, because, the truth is this: to make it to the pro level of any sport is insanely hard. It's insanely hard. It's nearly impossible when you think about it, but it's the road and the journey and what the game leads you to later in life, which we're totally going to dive into today. That is also the gift. And don't get me wrong, I wanted to play in the NHL. You want to play in the NBA. I totally get it. And the gifts that I got from the sport allowed me to stay involved in the sport and allowed me to really produce the life that I'm in today. And yes, I was a loudmouth in the locker room with a broadcasting voice, always talking before games. The coaches hated it, but that was my life. Okay. So anyway, JB, over to you.
Awesome. Gabe, great to see you again. And good thing you didn't pick a college in Philadelphia. So let's, that's a thing, because Lee, born and raised in Philadelphia.
You're always welcome here, Gabe, anytime you want.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's great. That's great. And, Gabe, actually, looking over knowing a little bit about college sports, like looking over your statistics, like you had a wonderful college career. My God, you played in 100 games. You started the bulk of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think you were even were you Ivy League Rookie of the Year, maybe something like that,
I
correct?
was, yeah.
Wow. You were.
Wow.
Okay.
That's
I mean,
awesome.
so for a 6'1", 6'2" kid from Las Vegas, you did pretty damn good for yourself. So I love that. And I love how you continue to put the the quantitative effort to it. I just love it. So Gabe, you graduated college, you got into the gaming industry, you spent a decade in the gaming industry, and then a bulk of that in China.
Mm-hmm.
So I have two questions actually. One, when you were in college, did you think this was something you wanted to do? Get into the gaming industry? What drove you to that? And then number two, how'd you end up in Macau?
Okay. So when I was in college, once it became apparent that the NBA just wasn't in the cards, I kind of had three things that I wanted to do. One was potentially come back to Las Vegas and go into the gaming industry. One was go to Wall Street and be a banker. And the third thing was I read the book Rogue Warrior, and it was interesting because the second two things, working on Wall Street or being a Navy SEAL, really both came from a twinge of self-doubt. Could I do that? And that's sort of always been something that's been a big part of my personality is, as soon as I find doubt or something like that, I like to go straight at it. Like there's this famous and semi-crazy story about Gordon Liddy, the Watergate mastermind. When he was, I believe he was 12 years old, he was afraid of two things. He was afraid of lightning and he was afraid of rats. His solution to that was he slept outside in a tree during a lightning storm. And then he trapped, cooked, and ate a rat. Now, I fully acknowledge that those are very strange things to do. But that course of action makes perfect sense to me. You see a fear, you see a phobia, you see a perceived weakness, and you go right after it. And it turned out that going to the military and going to Wall Street weren't the right things for me. And I ended up coming back to Las Vegas and going into the gaming industry and really was extremely fortunate that I got to work for some absolutely brilliant industry leaders and was so fortunate in the people that I got to work with and work for throughout my career.
And then JB alluded to it. You ended up in Macau.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Yeah.
Oh, okay. So ending up in Macau is actually quite a funny story. And I promise you, I am taking no poetic license here whatsoever, because this is exactly what was said to me. So the Terry Lanny, who was at the time the chairman of MGM and was very good to me and has unfortunately passed on since then. MGM was building its first casino in Macau, and I was approached about moving over there. And it turns out, and I wasn't aware of this at the time, I got 3 promotions before I ever moved over there, because at the time Macau was such a new place that basically it was really hard to get people with children to move over there. And so, and this part I am repeating verbatim from what the chairman told me. He said, Gabe, he said, we went out looking for the best people we could to send over and sort of, start this new international phase of our company. He's like, they all said no. And now we have you. But then the cool part was he followed that up. He said, Gabe, this is where opportunity comes from. He's like, Gabe, I'm going to be very frank. You were not my first or second or third choice, but you now have an opportunity, and this opportunity is what you make of it. And it was very fortunate, and I made a great deal of that opportunity. Ended up changing companies. I will tell you, my first 6 months in Macau were absolutely unbelievably frustrating, because before I moved to Macau, I had been running marketing at Bellagio. And I mean, it was literally like, on any given weekend, I would get calls from like, I'm trying to remember, like, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck were hanging out all the time. We had a great nightclub, and you know, everything was great. And I was 29 years old, and I was pretty convinced I knew everything. So I moved to Macau, and I was kind of like, hey, look, you know, I know how to run a casino. And what I learned the hard way was I knew a lot about running a casino in Las Vegas. I knew nothing about running a casino in China. And the moment that I figured that out, the moment that I was like, okay, Gabe, you've got to kind of release everything, go back to the fundamentals and just start learning. Everything started getting better. Everything took off. And it, you know, it was a great lesson in the sort of the danger of the pride and the hubris that we can bring with us to new situations.
You know, I'll tell you, Gabe, you've brought up a few really major points. I don't know if you even realize this, that I want to share with our audience, or at least, regurgitate for the audience. Number one is your curiosity for the unknown. Your curiosity when someone says to you, you can't do something. And I want everyone listening to understand how important that is. We wouldn't have been in outer space. We wouldn't be going to the moon. We wouldn't be going to Mars without that type of thinking. And I know that risk sometimes, there's people that they don't want to take risks. And the truth is this: if you want to be great, you're going to have to learn how to take risks. And Gabe, you've done that. And not just in sport, but in your life, like going to a foreign country to run a casino, that is a risk. And again, the curiosity of like, can I do this? I love that. Number one. Number two, I appreciate you making yourself vulnerable and telling the audience that, I had to make some changes. It's not uncommon in any profession. Coaching is a big one where when you start doing it, I know it all. I know what I'm doing. We got a statement here that good coaches know everything. Great coaches know nothing. Right. And it's that kind of understanding that the learning really never stops. You gain more and more experience, and you've really championed that in the experience that you've just said so far. Right. So I just think that that's phenomenal. I want to reiterate that to the audience, guys. You have to be able to be intrigued, curious about the unknown. The other point you just said about Macau, which I said Macau earlier, but I meant Macau. Thank you for correcting that. I have an official person here to tell me how to say that correctly. Is that, I love the story that you weren't first on the list, because that's another thing I think that's ailing the sports industry today is everybody wants to be first. And this is a common tale you hear about this. You were the best player in high school, you get to college, you're just one of the group. You're the best player in college, you go to pros, now you're just one of the group again. It's not about being the best all the time. It's if you get given an opportunity, you have to execute on the opportunity that you're given. And I think your curiosity for the unknown and your ability to do that is one of the reasons you're very successful, and not surprising that you went to Yale. Now, with that said, because this is going into a question, with your athletic past merged with your professional, present and future, what are the similarities between the two? What did sports give you in your life that helped maybe amplify the things we just spoke about, or that helped you get along the pathway that you're on today?
Okay. Well, I think there were a couple similarities, and one, and this is probably one of the reasons it's no coincidence that I ended up in the gaming industry for so long. In the gaming industry, just like in sports, we're getting a constant scoreboard. In the gaming industry, about every 4 hours, you get an update as to how the casino's doing. And then every day you get an update of how did you do the day before? How are you doing against your budget? How are you doing against the previous year? And it's literally like having that scoreboard up there that says, okay, you're ahead or you're behind. There's so much time left in the game. I think the thing that sports taught me the most was, how to be part of a team, how to look at your contribution to the team. Looking back on it, like everyone else, I wish I had been better at that. But I really do think that, sports was where my sense of teamwork, where my sense of fair play, where my sense of, okay, I am part of something bigger than me. How do I fit into the group? How do I help the group? That sort of thing. And it was, sports was absolutely, a huge effector on my life. In sort of the general overall philosophy of things.
I love it. Gabe, there's a couple things. One, you were humble enough when your boss said, hey, Gabe, you weren't one of the first three choices. You were the fourth choice. And some people can get like bummed out about that. But the second thing is he recognized something in you. Mm-hmm. Like he could have went to somebody else and, like we like to say, the gray beard, somebody a little bit older,
Mhm.
but he went to you. One, you're exceptionally bright. And so he saw something in you. And when the first three had other issues that couldn't go, he handed you the ball and, you took it for a touchdown. So, so my question is, you're there, you're in China. Did you speak Cantonese before you got there? Or did you learn it there, or how did that happen?
I mean, I learned to speak, and I wouldn't necessarily say I speak Cantonese. I would say I speak good Cantonese for an American.
Okay.
Which is sort of like being the tallest midget. It's not good. It's just better. I learned Cantonese sort of through a combination of I had a tutor. The woman I was dating spoke both Cantonese and English. But actually the biggest help in learning Cantonese was I would watch American movies that I already knew that had been dubbed into Cantonese and had subtitles.
Brilliant.
Or I would watch Hong Kong movies that had English subtitles. And in fact, there were a couple times where people, like good friends of mine, would say to me, "Hey, Gabe, did you ever notice that you speak in movie phrases?" Which was interesting because they were 100% right. And again, I learned to speak a degree of Cantonese, but unfortunately, it shows one of the ways in which we Americans are not great cultural assimilators. I speak decent conversational Cantonese,
yeah.
but I lived there for 8 years.
Right.
If you take a person from Macau and you drop them in Las Vegas, they're going to speak fluent English in 12 months. Mm-hmm. So again, I mean, I learned it. It was great. And I remember that there would be nights where, I'd be out with friends and, you've had a couple glasses of wine or a couple drinks, and all of a sudden the Cantonese is just flowing out of your mouth. And I remember the first time I told a joke in Cantonese and everyone laughed. And I was like, oh my God, I am the Jerry Seinfeld of Southeastern China. It felt so good because I enjoy learning. I very much enjoy overcoming challenges, but that was a lot of fun.
I love it. Gabe, I can see you in Cantonese saying, "You can't handle the truth," and it come out in Cantonese because that's amazing. I just want to follow up there. So obviously you're in a foreign country, you're in unfamiliar territory, there's probably not a lot of Americans there. Was there a particular regimen that you used that you can share with our audience that assisted you in this daily success? Because you had to kind of get yourself right. And obviously you were leading an organization. You just weren't there to fill a gap. You were leading this group. So talk our audience through what you use to help you.
Okay. Well, the most important thing was when I moved there, I made the decision. I said, okay, this is my home for the next, and the deal I made with myself when I moved there, I said for at least 3 years, this is my home. And that means no thinking about, man, I miss going to Dodgers games and I miss this. In fact, I remember I learned pretty quickly over there, as soon as a foreigner made mention of home, as soon as they said, I miss Taco Bell or something like that, I would literally immediately call HR and say, start looking for a replacement. This person's going to resign in the next 2 weeks. And so I made the decision, this is my home. This is what I'm going to do. And where I think that was very helpful to me was, when you make the decision, when you say this, this is my home, this is what I'm going to do, the things that you encounter are simply obstacles. It's simply, when something comes up or something strange or you don't understand something, instead of saying, oh, this is terrible, I want to go back to the US, you say to yourself, oh, look, I've got something to learn here. I need to understand this. I need to figure out how to integrate my thinking into this. Because this was actually one of the great pieces of advice that I got before I moved over there. I asked one of the guys in our Chinese marketing program, who was older than me and had been a great mentor to me. I said to him, tell me what I need to do to be successful here. And he said, first things first, Gabe, you are the foreigner now. He's like, you have never been the foreigner. You don't know what that feels like. He said, do not ever forget that you are the foreigner. And I did twice for probably 10 seconds each time, forget I was the foreigner, and got myself into real trouble both times. But yeah, the biggest thing was just, the commitment, just saying, look, I'm in on this. I'm ready to work. We're going to overcome these obstacles. Let's do it.
Yeah, Gabe, what's awesome about what you're saying too is I had some experience in this. My wife was in the U.S. Air Force, and I had to move to the United Kingdom for 3 years. Now, I didn't have the language barrier. Obviously, I always joke that I speak American and Canadian fluently.
Drinking barrier though.
I could hold my own with that regard, but no, yeah, absolutely. They let me know that though, but I kind of took a similar mindset of like, no, this is where we're going to live. We're going to be here for 3 years. I'm not thinking 3 years ahead. I'm not thinking about where I just was. This is my home for 3 years. Right. And it's amazing. And maybe you could talk about this a little bit more, is that when you move kind of all that red tape out of the way and all those inhibitions out of the way, it's amazing what you start to think about when you're not missing home, when you're not thinking about home, and you've kind of made that dedication that this is my home, or if you're in sports, this is my team now, or this is the level I'm at now. You can really focus on the things that you control, which is really important, right? Because it's a waste of time to focus on things you can't control, right? And B, you can really make new opportunities for yourself. So, when I went to England, I worked in hockey at the time. I wasn't thinking to myself, oh, England doesn't know anything about hockey. This is going to be a long 3 years. I said, let me find out everything I can about English hockey, and ended up getting a job in English hockey, and I enjoyed every minute of it. I still have great friends over there. So I just want to pull the thread on that with you a little bit about, mentally, when you did remove that thought process, or I should say you didn't allow yourself to have that thought process, that had to have opened up other doors mentally and professionally for you as well while you were there.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was, not only was it a lesson in cultural, or what we used to call over there cultural elasticity. Can somebody fit into multiple groups?
Right.
Most importantly, can they fit into the group that's not their sort of quote natural group? Not only was it a great lesson in that, it was a great lesson overall in life. In the, I'm a believer that when you're confronted with an obstacle, and the obstacle can be anything from something that's giant, or I can't find my keys. You literally have, you can't control the situation, but and we've all heard this, you can't control the situation, but you can control your approach to the situation. And to use the simplest one, when you can't find your keys, you have the option to be like, oh, I can't find my keys. Life is unfair. This is terrible.
Right.
Or you can be like, okay, this is interesting. I've got a problem to solve. When was the last time I had my keys? Where could my keys be? Do I have an extra set of keys? And it really did. I think it was a huge helper in, just my skill development in becoming a problem solver, and helping to get people to look together, to work together. I had along those lines, I had a great interaction with our corporate attorney when I was at MGM, and he had lived in Macau for more than 20 years. And I was submitting something to the government. And I was kind of complaining about the form. I was like, I don't understand why they need this or what it's for. And this seems like, doesn't seem like a great use of time. This was sort of in that first 6 months before I had understood how to do things. And he said to me, Gabe, why do they want this form? What are they going to do with it? And I said, I don't know. How would I know that? And he said, Gabe, if you don't know why they want the form and you don't know what they're going to do with it, how can you possibly give them what they want? And of course, I got upset. And then I went home that night and I thought about it, and I'm like, wow, he's really right. How can you give someone what they want if you're not certain what they want? And governments and things can't always tell you what they need, but you at least need to have some kind of understanding. We all have a boss. We all have someone to answer to. And that was a huge, and to this day, I ask people that question, what is this being done for? What's the end goal here? What's the desired outcome? That was a huge learning moment for me.
Yeah. And I love that you're bringing that up, man, because I'll tell you right now, again, equating it to sports for a minute, right? It's like when you're on a team, and this goes both ways with the coach and the player, right? Sometimes you might be in a role on a team you don't want or you're not comfortable with, right? And it's your ability to kind of get past I don't want to be in this role. I don't want to be doing this, and say, okay, what can I do in this role? I've been in situations in my life, I didn't make the team I wanted to, and I ended up being better on the other team because it's a better situation. Same thing from a coaching aspect or from a leadership aspect. We always say this to people, right? Like, well, do you know how your employees are motivated? No. Well, then how are you going to motivate your employees or your players, right? And this all comes back to communication. Something JB talks about a lot, and really well, I might add, is emotional quotient. So, JB, I want to throw to you because I'm sure you have some thoughts about that based on what Gabe just said too.
Well, Gabe, we talk a lot about on this show, and you and I have discussed it before, the importance of IQ and the importance of EQ. And of course, you have a high IQ. You're brilliant. But, talking about, your life and post basketball career, your emotional quotient is high, and dealing with so many of the standards and so many of the different aspects of living in a foreign country. And you did that, and you found a way to merge that group together. I'm sure people looked at you and like, well, who's this guy? Mm-hmm. And you found that way. So maybe you can just, tell our audience, the importance of understanding who other human beings are. Mm-hmm. You discussed it a little bit already, and why that makes you successful.
Okay. I'm not sure I would agree, and there are definitely others who would not agree that my EQ is particularly high, but for the purpose of the question, we'll go on with it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's about understanding, look, when you're interacting with a human being. I have plenty of time made the mistake of thinking, okay, look, I have a well drawn out argument. My argument is sound. I am clearly correct. The people I'm talking to will obviously understand that I'm correct, and they will agree with me. That's just not how human beings think. In fact, there's a great book by Peter Guber called Tell to Win. And it's about the difference between making a presentation and telling a story. And, look, presentations and facts and all that kind of stuff, that's nice. But human beings react to stories. And if you think historically through the ages, how we as human beings learn and pass things on, we pass them on via stories. We pass them on like, the story of the Good Samaritan is meant to, show children how to be a good person. Now you can say to a kid every day, hey, be a good person because it's the right thing to do. Yeah, whatever. But then, you get a bunch of kids together and you use your voice and you tell the story of the Good Samaritan. That's what sticks. And to me, that's a big part of EQ, is not just, it's so easy, especially for me, and this is something I struggle with. I have to always keep in mind, I am not delivering this message to myself. I am delivering this message to other people. And I've been very guilty in the past of being like, wow, Gabe, great speech. Yeah, that's a great speech for the one person whose understanding doesn't matter. And that's me. Like, it's got to be for all the people around you. And that's what I really think, that's what I think EQ is. Can you understand what your audience is grasping, what they're not grasping? Are they getting concepts? And it was really interesting learning to do that in a foreign country, because there are a couple things I had to take out. I enjoy sarcasm. Chinese people just don't do sarcasm. The Chinese languages are particularly literal. Now there's lots of slang, but they're literal. So they're kind of like, why would you say one thing and mean another? That makes no sense. The other thing is Chinese languages are tonal languages. So for example, guai, 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 and guai are 4 different words. So, whereas where we do jokes because 2 words in English sound similar, in Chinese, they don't do that because those words sound, they do it rarely because those words actually don't sound similar to them. Like I sat with my Cantonese tutors and lots of friends with exactly those 4 guai words. And I'm like, I really feel like you said the same word 4 times.
That's what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, no, and they would be like, no, they don't sound at all correct.
Right.
They don't sound at all similar. But then it was interesting to kind of reverse it, and this is what really helped me to understand it. So a friend of mine who had lived in both the U.S. and China, he said, Gabe, what do you eat at a baseball game? And I'm like, peanuts. And he's like, what is the name of a person who plays a piano? And I'm like, okay, pianist. He's like, to me, those words sound exactly the same.
Right.
And I'm like, no, that's ridiculous. Those words aren't the same at all. But again, it's the difference of where am I coming from and where are they coming from? And, the ability to learn to bridge that was a really great lesson. It's also something that we Americans, you sit down with a bunch of Americans, you take for granted everybody speaks English. Okay, that's good. In other parts of the world, that's not the case. And so what you'll do, 8 or 10 people get together for dinner and you kind of arrange the seating. You're like, okay, Gabe speaks English and Cantonese, which means if there's a Mandarin speaker, we got to put the Cantonese Mandarin speaker between Gabe and there. And it's actually kind of cool to watch people work through that. And, I developed great friends with whom I could only have very basic conversations. But it's also kind of something that's interesting in communication without the benefit of speaking a language at a very high level is it can actually be an asset. If you can literally only say to a person, I like you, I trust you, and I want to be in business with you, those are 3 very powerful things. And if you can build on that. And that was one of the really cool parts of the learning experience.
Well, that's great. And we know that, Lee, you can never go to China because you are king of sarcasm.
I really am. Yeah, that would be a death blow to me. I said,
you can make all the sarcastic jokes you want, just no one will laugh, I promise.
What was funny is when I lived in England, it was quite the opposite. The masters of sarcasm, and I was actually behind my game.
Yes.
Maybe that's why I'm so good at it now, JB. But yeah, Gabe, just dive in a little bit more into your early life now, just for a second. We said you went to Yale. Your brother went to West Point and was a star football player there. So what was the credit to that kind of early success in your family? I mean, obviously athletically blessed. You guys both went to very good schools that demand the highest of standards. What was the process like from your life to get you both there?
Well, I mean, I think our parents did a phenomenal job of instilling a moral code, a work ethic. There was a lot of, we always had chores. We always had things we had to do. And I think that we both learned through that, very early on, there's things you want to do and there's things you have to do. And there's going to be a balance in life. And the ability to, self-motivate, to set a goal, to work hard for it. I really think, that I really think that's where it came from. And I'm a very fortunate person in many, many ways. And one of the biggest ways is I have 2 absolutely wonderful parents.
It's wonderful for sharing. And it's also a thing that, I think the audience should understand too, is if you have 2 parents that care about you and, make you strive for greatness, it's a gift. It's a gift in a lot of ways. I've worked with a lot of athletes and a lot of teams where, single parent homes or no parent homes, where the kids are living with grandparents or not as fortunate. And you start to see that side of things. And I just, I think it's kind of understood when you're younger that you might not appreciate that as much. But the older I get, the more I appreciate that I had the parents that I had and that they were really supportive of my dreams. I remember my father used to say to other people that, I wanted to play in the NHL, and they'd say, that's not going to happen. Never going to happen. And, my father would say, look, you don't have to support his dream, but you have to support his right to have a dream. And you're forgetting that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It might not happen, but what you learn along the way, and like you said, your parents to strive for dreams. And then you guys played sports at the highest level in collegiate sports. And then look at what you're accomplishing outside of there. I mean, and look, there's other people along the way. There's coaches, there's mentors, but we need to value that more as a society. Just like I think the Asian countries teach respect and teach honor and teach trust. Those are the things that really make great teams and great relationships. Anyway, JB, over to you, bud.
Yeah, no, and I just want to comment because I know that both of you take time with your parents. I think, Lee, you take your father out to lunch every week. I know that Gabe, does surfing or something with his dad, something like that. And my parents are both passed, and I miss them every day. And those small touch points. So if you're a young man or young woman out there, remember this, and you can make this life great. Gabe, I just want to talk about, a lot on here, whether you're an athlete or business professional, a military soldier, those careers come to an end and you change careers. And that's what you did. You decided to retire early in your early 40s, did well for yourself. And then you change gears and you're big into the gaming industry as far as, coming up with these programs for sports betting and such. And just talk us through that. Like, how'd you do that? You had to become your own entrepreneur. So now, instead of controlling, thousands of people, you're now just, in charge of yourself. Mm-hmm. So walk us through that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's been a big transition in the, I've had as many as 10,000 team members sort of under my direction. And one of the things that it taught me is, I do miss being part of the team. Because it used to be at the end of a big month or a big quarter, I would always take the team out to dinner and stuff like that. If I have a great day or a great month with the trading algorithms right now, it's really just me and my dog. And I'll be honest, I don't think my dog understands the complexities of the training algorithm. And so I do miss being part of the team. One of the things that the transition kind of made me aware of, and it was funny because it kind of took me back to this phrase that I learned in Macau, which is actually a Russian phrase. And the phrase translates, if you want God to laugh, tell him your plans. Because the truth is, we can set a plan, but we're not in control of it. I'm a big fan, not just of his movies, but of some of the philosophies of Bruce Lee. And Bruce Lee used to say that a goal is actually not something to be attained. It's something to be aimed for. Because and what I always took from that is the truth is, by the time you reach a goal, you've probably known for weeks or months you were going to reach the goal. The goal is more important when it's years away, when it's really more of a North Star. That's the direction I'm going to head in. And I think it's important to be, and I've done this. It's very important to be flexible, and to be, as Lee mentioned earlier, are you ready to find the good out of the bad? And my absolute favorite story about this, and this is when I talk to management groups or when I talk to college kids or something like that, I love sharing the story of Viagra. Viagra, there were at least 5 pharmaceutical companies. And keep in mind, these are the most profitable companies in the world. These companies have unlimited resources. They have an unlimited number of brilliant people working there. And they had been working on ED meds for over a decade. Viagra was actually developed as a vasodilator for people who'd had heart transplant surgery to allow better circulation. And by the way, it's not that good at that. But when they did the first clinical trials, they're like, there is this one interesting side effect. And so they're like, well, okay, do another 100 people. Like the smartest and most resource-laden companies in the world accidentally solved one of their biggest challenges. And I always look at that and I say, okay, if that's how they solve something, then I need to be open to that. I know what I want to happen and I know what I intend to happen, but I also need to be open to what does happen, and I need to be open to, to change. And I love other examples of that. Like, when Phil Knight founded Nike, he wanted to make running shoes like that. That's about the smallest niche market in the world. Now Nike is the world's most valuable fashion brand. In the same way, the world's most valuable company, Amazon, started out selling books online. But books are dying. We're all reading books on our Kindles and iPads and all that now. The truth is, selling books online was probably not that great of an idea. But at some point, someone was like, hey, Jeff, maybe we should sell bookmarks too. And he's like, yeah, that's a good idea. And then they're like, well, maybe we should sell pens and papers too. Okay, yeah, let's do that. And now Amazon is basically the logistics and delivery company from the entire world when they started out selling books. And, I think that's to me, that's real intelligence, is the ability to learn and to react and be like, okay, this is where we were headed, but now this is where we are headed, and as we've all heard, no battle plan will survive contact with the enemy. No business plan will survive contact with the real world. And one of the problems, especially with smart people, is we believe we're right. And we have to be, we have to demonstrate that elasticity and be ready to be like, oh my God, my great idea was actually a terrible idea. And through the twists and turns of life, I now have a much better idea.
There's some phenomenal wisdom in what you were just telling in all those stories. And I could equate it to so many things here, man. Like, if we're just talking business, I think it's like 80% of the world's top businesses were built during a recession or something like that. It's an incredible number. Like most of the best businesses come from the worst economic times in American and world history. But I can equate it down to my own level, man. Like, look, I've written several books. And I know this from the very first one I wrote. Whatever you think you're going to write, that is not what the book is going to be when you're done. It's not. You have this goal of this is what this book's going to be about. You end up with something completely different. You look at a sports,
especially after the editors get to it,
right?
Like mine.
Listen, my publisher legit made me stop and rewrite an entire book when I was almost done with the first one. But she was right. It's the same thing with a sports season. You're coaching. Yeah, well, the goal is this. Man, there's no way that you're going to get to your goal cleanly the way you think it's going to do. Injuries happen, fights happen, unexpected, unforeseen things happen. COVID happens, things happen. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think what you're talking about that I want to reiterate for the audience is I know what it's like to be an athlete or a coach or an entrepreneur, and you want something. All right. And you tell yourself, I am motivated, I am strong, and I am the right person to get to this point. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you can do that and also allow yourself to be patient, and that's how I usually phrase that, to allow yourself to be patient with the process, to live in the present moment with the process and enjoy the process, it's usually a pretty good chance. Not only will you reach a goal, might be not the goal you started with, but you'll have enjoyed it, you'll have learned a lot, and you'll have lived. Above all. Mm-hmm. And we, again, look, especially in youth sports, like unfortunately coaches, parents, even athletes forget this. It's all about being the best, making the best, and, don't enjoy the journey. Just, you got to be on the A team. You got to be on the college team. And the truth is you learn so much from the journey and, winning can be defined however you want it to be defined. Right. Like, again, you look at sports, you look at hockey, you look at basketball, it's about winning the NBA championship, right? Hockey Stanley Cup. So much more than that. Right. And I find the people that don't slow down, be patient. And by the way, when I say patient, I don't mean, stopping when you're making aggressive strides. I mean, just being patient with yourself to understand that it's going to take time to get from A to B, no matter what you do. Right. Mm-hmm. And learn. I find the highest performers, the highest achievers do that better than most. Their ability to be in the present moment that's what they're really pros at, right? It's not so much the talent for the sport. When it comes to athletes, most great athletes are just great athletes, period. Most professional athletes could probably play another professional sport, right? But their ability to stay in the present moment, their ability to do what you do, man, which is to adapt, to look at a situation that's uncomfortable. And JB says this is what the military does better than anybody: make the uncomfortable comfortable. And adapt. And we're governed by so much fear nowadays of failing. And the only way to learn outside reading a book is to fail. I mean, it's the last thing, Gabe, and I'm going to jump into another question. Again, I'm talking a lot, but I was taking a course about emotional intelligence, and the instructor said this great thing. And he goes, this is the problem with most people. You put your hand on a hot oven, right? You pull your hand back real quick because you don't want to burn your hand. And you learn that once, and most likely you're not going to knowingly put your hand on a hot oven ever again. Because the problem with most people is they put their hand on the oven, this is with their lives, and they just keep it there while it burns because they just don't have that reaction of, hey, whoa, let me learn. It's failure, right? They're afraid if I take my hand off this, they'll know I've failed, right? Your hand's burning, get your hand off the oven. So I think you echoed a lot of that there. And I think it's just so important for anyone listening to this show, not just athletes, to hear that. So, JB, did you have anything to add to that? Sorry, I'm talking a lot this episode. I've clearly had a cup of coffee.
No, it's great. Everything that that Gabe said makes sense. I think that we need to continue to be patient in the process,
Right.
while we're learning and growing. Doesn't mean we stop and we sleep, but sometimes as everything's the Sports Center moment, we
Right.
want it right now. And if you look at the best in anything, they are patient in it. I used to always tell West Point cadets, when they were getting ready to be, graduate and be lieutenants, I'm like, don't abandon the plan at the first sign of gunfire.
Right.
Mhm.
You have a good plan. The opponent, the enemy, they're going to come after you. So you just have to be prepared for that, and how you respond. It's that strength and that's resolve. But before we get to Lee's final question, I have one question for you, Gabe, kind of off subject. So what physical fitness event can you beat your brother in? That's what I've been wanting to know.
Oh,
So
man.
let's pick one, because
3-point competition.
yeah, maybe, because his brother Nate, he still works out like a beast, and I know you do too, Gabe. But if you had to take him out, what was it?
Wait, first off, who's older, who's younger? We should establish the rules of this game first.
I'm 2 years old.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So JB's right. If I was going to beat Nate at anything at anything in sports, it would have to be around basketball. Now I will admit this, and I was actually just signing up for this morning. So my brother and I have done probably 8 or 10 Tough Mudder events together. And we've done World's Toughest Mudder. He's done it twice and I've done it once. Let's see, the first time we did it, I did 30 miles and he did 35 miles. And for people who aren't aware, World's Toughest Mudder is a 24-hour race. Wow. With a 5-mile course with 20 obstacles on it. And you have 24 hours to go around as many times as you can. The first time we did it, I did 30 miles and I think he did 35. The second time, I didn't do it with him because I just didn't have time. My brother's number in college was 55. So he did 11 laps. He did 55 miles, which was his target, on a broken ankle. Like that's just the kind of guy my brother is. Honestly, like to answer JB's question, I don't even think I think about beating Nate at anything athletically anymore. Like once in a while we'll be down at the beach or hanging out by the pool or something, and I'll go in and I'll shove him in the pool. But as soon as I shove him in the pool, I'm like, he's just going to get out and pin you to the ground. Like, it's one of those things where I win for 5 seconds and then he wins for 5 minutes. So yeah, outside of basketball, maybe golf, that's about the only thing I could beat my brother at.
No, I love it. Tonight's matchup, Yale versus West Point in a battle of brotherly wits. Who will overcome the adversity? No, it's I have a similar deal with my older brother. So I might be on the younger brother side of that argument, but he and I always would compete growing up, and he's 5 years older than me. So he won a lot until I got to college, and that flip-flopped on him pretty quickly after that. But, JB, I do want to say one thing too. You talked about the Sports Center moment, and Gabe, you're doing a great job of explaining this for our audience today. Every great moment or horrible moment in sports that you have ever watched, any of you, was accompanied by years of preparation, years of training, years of pain, pleasure, everything, and we're unfortunately right now as a society in a time period where we have human highlight reels surrounding us on our phones, on the TV all the time. And it just gives a pretty unrealistic view of humankind, right? And if you're listening to this and you're a young athlete, when we say be patient, and JB, it's just a great point you made about the Sports Center thing. It took a lot of time for any athlete to get to their Sports Center moment or moments. All right. And a lot of work. And if you're young right now, you're putting in that work. And that's when we say you got to give yourself permission to be patient. If you've got a goal to be a top athlete or a top coach, it's a great goal to have. It's a great goal to have, right? But you got to be patient with the process to get there. All right. All great coaches get fired. All of them. All of the greatest coaches in history have been fired at one point or another, right? You got to know that all great athletes, it's the same thing. They've been injured at some point. All right. Unless you're Tom Brady, then that's just, that's obviously not a human being right there. But, for the most part, even he works his butt off, right? Gabe, it's going to bring me to my final question. Oh, go ahead, JB.
I just got one. I want to add on that because I also want to tell the parents that are listening, because your 12-year-old doesn't make some silly AAA team doesn't mean it's the end for him or her.
Right.
Like
could be an opportunity.
like relax. Exactly. Might be another opportunity. So I think sometimes, these young people, they lose their love for the game because it's this constant pressure. Well, I have to make this team or I have to make that team. Well, everybody finds their own route to success. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to do that. And Gabe's a perfect example of that. So I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, no, look, go ahead,
guys, if I could just,
please. Yeah, it's your show. It's your time.
No, I just wanted to interject because it kind of follows very much on the journey and share a quick story. I had had a professional situation that did not work out well, and I was bummed about that. And I came back to the U.S. and I share this story a lot with people now. I landed in the U.S. I believe the Saturday before the Super Bowl. So I'm sitting I think I was sitting in LAX waiting to fly to Vegas, and I'm looking at my phone, looking at ESPN, and it's got one of those things, on this day in history. And it said 20 years ago today, the Cleveland Browns fired their young coach because, he had a 5-year contract. They were 3 years in and they were just unhappy with it. That coach was Bill Belichick.
Right.
Like that's so easy to forget. The Cleveland Browns fired Bill Belichick. And I think it's a great example of, one thing doesn't determine us. And as I thought you made a great point when you talked about the importance of enjoying the journey, because we do, we have these sports center moments and there are a lot of those. But for me, when you think about the people that you really admire and the people that you look up to, if it's someone like Kobe Bryant or Tom Brady or, the Muhammad Ali or people like that, do we really love their biggest moments or do we love their journey? If you look at what Muhammad, I love watching, old Muhammad Ali fights, but what I really love is what Muhammad Ali did for mankind.
Right. And
that's, his journey had some very highs and some very lows. And I really think, if we think about that, it makes it easier to stop saying like, oh, I got to be here right now and I got to be here every day. Like, the journey is what will be remembered for.
Right.
So I really liked your point on that.
No, thanks, man. And the people that you meet along the way, right? Like I think everybody here saw The Last Dance, the documentary on, the mm-hmm. mid-90s Bulls. And, what I tell people is that, it was a great story, right? Great documentary, great story. What people miss from that, and Gabe, this is what you're talking about, is they say it pretty point blank in there, is that Michael Jordan is probably the greatest athlete of all time of being in the present moment. And that's how he was able to do what he did, right? His goal was always to win. It was never not to win, and he was hard on his players, but he was always in the moment with his team, right? Mm-hmm. He understood he had to take those steps to get to the championship. And again, just to echo you again on that, the journey is all we have. When you think of present moment awareness, the past has already happened. The future hasn't happened yet. They're not real. What's real is this conversation, right? Look, I've got 2 kids. I love my wife. I love my kids, but right now I'm with you 2. This is my life right now. This is the conversation. This is how I stay focused. This is how I learn. JB, we're not going to jump into warfare, but I would imagine that when you're in the thick of it, you have to stay presently focused, with your guys, your troops. It really is a key to success. It's a key to life. It's a key to enjoyment, and JB, again, I'll throw it over to you again in a minute, but, just a quick story for me too. I remember, echoing both of you, never know how things are going to go. I remember my 3rd year playing. I started playing hockey when I was 12, so really late. And I was getting better at a really, really fast pace. But I remember my 3rd year, I didn't make the team I thought I needed to make to keep moving up. And they put me down a level. And I remember I was really disappointed. And long story short, it was the best thing that could have happened to me, because the coach at that lower level understood that, hey, man, I got 6 years I'm missing here of just basic fundamentals in hockey and strategy and tactics. And to his credit, his name was Fred Snickers, an incredible human being. He sat with me for half an hour before every practice and just taught me everything he could. Right. Didn't have to do it. Like, he just asked me, and, my parents have the clairvoyancy, like, you're doing this. Right. If I never have that season, I never make it as far as I do because of that situation. So JB, to your point about AAA teams, like, you never know what the journey will bring, but to Gabe's point, how you adapt, how you accept it. If I spent that whole season saying I should have been on this other team, it would have been a horrible year. right? You just accept it. No, I'm here. I'm going to learn from this situation. I'm going to embrace it. I think that's a word we haven't used today, Gabe. And I'm going to make the best of it. JB, I can see you got something you want to say. Go ahead.
No, that's exactly it. And you don't know that coach that taught you at a lower level knows somebody at someplace else. And
Right.
they get a call and like, hey, I'm looking for somebody to fill out a roster. This is how it is.
Right.
And you need somebody? I got a perfect
Right.
guy for you, Lee Elias. He's this, he's that. And that's how business is done. I just think, we should remember the past.
Yeah, reflect for sure.
We should plan for the future, but we should fight in the present.
Love it.
And when we try to get out of that present, what happens is we get out of ourselves and things become too fast, and then we make mistakes. And sometimes you need to continue to fight in that present. And remember, when it gets darkest, when it gets toughest, you're close to your goal.
Right.
So just keep going. And I think that's just so important. We've talked about it today, and it's just been amazing.
So Gabe, one more question for you, just to round this out, get back on track a little bit. All this has been a great episode. Just your general advice to aspiring athletes, coaches, and entrepreneurs. I mean, we've gone over a lot of it today, but like I said, anything you have to say to them about where they might be on the journey or how they can accomplish the goals that they're setting for themselves that may change as we've established moving forward.
I would say most importantly, you got to find something that you love doing. You made the analogy, and like everyone else in our age group, I'm a huge Michael Jordan fan. One of the things I love about Michael Jordan is God made Michael Jordan a great athlete. That's not for debate.
Right.
Michael Jordan made Michael Jordan the greatest athlete because he competed every day, because he worked every day, because he was in the moment. And I don't think you can do that unless you're doing something that you love. Because if you don't love it, you're just not going to go the extra mile. You're not going to be able to stay present. And so my biggest advice, if you want to be great at something, find something that you love doing, and just let yourself do it. Be open to it. As you guys just said, embrace it, be open to the twists and the turns. And when you work hard, when you do the right things, good things find you eventually.
That's great advice, man. Yeah. So you've been a phenomenal guest, Gabe. This has been a really enjoyable hour.
Oh, guys, thank you so much for having me. I really, really enjoyed being on.
Yeah, it's no pleasure at all. JB, any final words before I close it out?
I just think I'll just add that I just saw a stat yesterday. Michael Jordan made 100 million as a player, and he's made 1 billion since he's retired from playing. So see that? I mean, he had a passion for the game, and he had a passion for other things, and that's what we must continue to do. We must continue to reinvent ourselves every single day.
Absolutely. And look,
Gabe, you're awesome. You're awesome, Gabe.
Guys, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this and really enjoyed it.
It goes both ways, man. Look, proximity is power. And I'll tell you right now, in this show, and I'm privileged to work with JB, but I'm privileged to speak with so many great people, great human beings that, have the highest of standards. You're no different. And that's what makes this show and everything we do great. So that's going to do it for this episode of Win Championship Trades for Life, which is powered by Pivotal Moments. And once again, you can learn more about the organization and our channel Grit at pivotalmoments.org. And there you can get more inspirational, entertaining, and most importantly, educational content. So for Gabe Hunterton and JB Spizo, I'm Lee Elias. Thanks so much for joining us. Make sure to keep an eye out for more episodes of Win, wherever podcasts can be heard. Thanks so much for listening, and we will see you next time. Have a great day, everybody.